Hey everybody, I want to talk about, in this club chat, I want to talk a little bit about wedges and replacing your wedges, just for a couple minutes here. First of all, you guys know, and I hope you guys know at home, that the wedges in your bag, for sure your lob wedge, your most lofted wedge in your bag, which is typically your 58 degree or 60 degree wedge, your sand wedge, which is typically your 54, 56 degree wedge, and for a lot of you, even your gap wedge, which is around your 50 degree wedge. Those need to be a forged type metal, which is a very soft metal with steel shafts. Okay, fit to you perfect. And we want that steel shaft in there to get some weight. We want that forged metal to create that spin. But here's the one thing here. When you get that forged type metal in that face, it is a softer type metal. And we want those in those clubs because that creates a lot of spin, a lot of feel. It gives you that, it maximizes your short game, okay? But with that being said, these clubs eventually will wear out. In fact, as you guys seen in some of my previous videos, I've talked to Roger Cleveland and the different guys about this, and even some pros will replace these wedges every month or two because they use them so much and wear them out so fast. Now, I don't expect you guys to be doing that unless you're playing a lot and you really practice on with these clubs, but I get this question quite often: when do I need to change my wedge? And guys, the way to do that is to look at the wedge. Number one, you can look at the wedge and start seeing the grooves in there. And if you start seeing a lot of wear in those grooves, okay, that's number one, is the time to start looking to replace that wedge. Number two is you can run your finger across it. And I actually take my fingernail and I'll run it across it. And you'll see that if you guys brought your wedges to school, or you said, do I need to replace these? The very first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna sit there and I'm gonna feel the face of the club. And I have a wedge right here, and this is a MD5, and it's a great wedge, but it's a little bit worn down. So I look at this, I start running my fingers across this, and yeah, there's some grooves on the top, but I start going to the middle of that club, and it's pretty, there's not a lot of grooves there. In fact, they're pretty shallow. In fact, I can compare the top grooves to the middle grooves. I can feel that they're pretty shallow. They've been worn down quite a bit, okay? And if I go to this newer wedge here, which is one of the new raw face wedges, I can feel that there's a lot more grooves on it, okay? So the biggest thing is, now the two ways I check it and the way I'd suggest it, number one is by, you can look at. You can see there's wear in that face. That's number one. Number two is by the feel. If you notice, when I go across this raw face of this wedge right here, this new one, it grabs my finger. In fact, if I took a golf ball and rubbed it across it, you could feel the grab in it. It grabs my finger and it feels like it's some resistance. When I go to this wedge here, it feels very slick and very smooth, okay? Because it's been worn down. Well, obviously, if it feels slick and smooth, there's not gonna be as much spin there, okay? And guys, in the wedges, you wanna maximize the spin. I will tell you right now that if you do this right, and if you're practicing correctly, I would suggest that your 60-degree wedge, you're probably going to go through 1 or 2 a year. Yeah, some of you guys are think that's crazy, but guys, remember, the three most used clubs in your bags, your putter, your driver, and your most lofted wedge, okay? So maybe a 58 or 60 degree wedge. But you want to check it often. You want to check to make sure that we've got good grooves in it. Because the second we start wearing the grooves out, when you start hitting shots out of that high rough, you start hitting shots out of bunkers, you start hitting shots a little bit of dew, or just normal shots, you can loosen that spin. And guys, with the greens now, with the faster greens, the harder greens, the different circumstances we play in, you want to have maximum spin, especially in these clubs. So, two ways to do it. Number one, rub your finger across it. If you don't feel much resistance, it's probably getting worn down. Number two, you can kind of take your fingernail and rub it across it. You can look at it and see if you're starting to wear those grooves down, you may want to look to replace it. Number three is just a look test. Yeah, I can see in this wedge right here that it's pretty worn down in the middle, and I'm probably going to want to replace those grooves, okay? So guys, check your wedges, especially your most lofted often. If you guys start getting those grooves worn down and they start wearing out, you want to replace those. Remember, the reason you want to replace them is because we want to maximize spin and feel in those wedges. You start wearing those grooves out, you start losing that spin and feel, you start hurting your game. So I promise you, keep those wedges, we call them, keep them fresh in your bag, will definitely keep your game at the best level, and definitely improve your game the most, and definitely give you the best scoring.